Hey there friends, Irene, Lyon here. Welcome to this video, to this YouTube channel, and to this world of healing trauma, nervous system health, and all things neuroplasticity. A very common question, comment, concern I hear and I read via all the places I read comments and get questions comes down to a person's deep desire to heal everything that I talk about in my videos. So trauma, adversity, chronic illnesses, various mental illnesses, and people know that as they learn that those are a result of unhealed early trauma adversity for the most part. At least that's what the research is telling us. And so they want to do this work, but one of the things that's holding them back is that they don't want to remember, or they don't want to start to remember things that may have happened to them in the past that they don't remember, right? We know that the human system, our conscious mind, our unconscious mind, all of it is protective at times. And sometimes we literally hide, we bury, we put into the closet, so to speak, all of these old memories because they were really painful. Now, some of these memories are so old that we may not even have a conscious memory that was formed because these bad things that occurred to us, these traumatic incidents, happened pre-verbally, maybe even in utero. So we might not have a conscious memory, like, for example, I was in that car accident when I was 8 and I remember it and it was really scary. We may not have the ability to verbalize cognitively what occurred to us. And so many are afraid of what might, bubble up to the surface as they start to work with their bodies, their nervous systems from this somatic level. And it is very, there's good reason, because we know that the reason we trap these memories inside is because they were too intense, because they were too big and scary for our little systems to process, whether we had the faculties on board to process them, or we saw, we felt, and we just wiped it out of our conscious memory. Now, it's important to understand that when we do this healing work, this trauma healing work from the somatic nervous system level, at least in the way that I work with my students and clients, when we do the work in a way that is sequenced, and I call this neuroplastic healing sequencing. I'll talk a little bit about that today, but I'll also reference some other videos and articles for you to check out so you can learn a little more about this. But the first thing I want to say is, when we sequence our healing, when we do the work in a very step-by-step way that is slow and titrated. I have another video on titration that I'll post below. So when we do this work with a very intelligent, smart, methodical way, and we know what we're working with, we know what we're getting into, we get educated on the processes at hand, when we build the capacity in a slow, foundational way, it makes it such that when and if these memories, when and if these sensations, and they will come up, these intense sensations, when they start to come up, when they do come up, we are prepared, not just mentally, but physiologically. We have got the capacity to take on whatever comes up. However, if we haven't done that work, if we don't know what the road looks like, if we don't know how to read the map, to use that analogy of driving and being able to navigate a map and a car and all the different gears and all the bells and whistles that we might need to flick up and down and all those things that you would need to, say, drive a car, if we haven't learned all those steps, then yes, it might be terrifying. Imagine if you've never driven a car ever, and as an adult, you're just given, this vehicle, and let's say it's a stick shift, and you have no clue how a car functions. I don't know what that would look like, but chances are it would be next to impossible to pull that off, especially if you don't understand standard transmission, right? It'd be very difficult. And it's similar, if not almost identical, to healing the nervous system, working with traumatic memories, somatic memories that are trapped in our nervous system, but also in our physiology, in our organ tissues, in how our cardiovascular system responds to stress, our immune system, how we relate to the environment, how we relate to people, how we sense our own bodies. So to go back to kind of this theme, the worry about the memory is valid, because if we had bad things occur to us and we don't remember, the reason why we don't remember is because it's protective. The system at the time couldn't handle the intensity, so we shut it down. So first thing to understand is that we don't want to erase the memories from our system. If we were to erase, let's just say, I'll go back to the example of something that we do remember. We do remember that horrific event, that scary thing that happened to us. Be very careful for what you wish for is the first thing I'll say, because if we erase our memory, if we truly get at like true memory loss, that is brain damage, and we don't want that. We don't want to lose our memory. So we have to look at these memories as part of us, part of our system, part of our past, and they are part of us. And we need to approach them and work with them in an intelligent, regulated, titrated way so that our system isn't over flooded with information. And what that might look like, the way we might get an over flooding of information, it's not just cognitive in the mind, but it's how the physiology responds to that memory. So we can have a memory of, say, again, I'll use the example of, say, a car accident. And if we aren't able to stay connected to the present moment, it is the year 2020, it is approaching summer here, it's a blue, beautiful day, there's birds outside, and I'm having that memory of that accident. Let's say we get sucked back in to that time in the past and we lose all connection to the here and now. That's not good. That shows that our capacity to stay in the present moment is yet to be built. We want to build up that muscle, that nervous system muscle, that somatic muscle to stay here and now. So part of the processes that we would go through to help someone work with traumatic events from the past has nothing to do with going back to remembering those traumatic events from the past. We start with the current now, getting better at being with our body, connecting to the ground under us, to the space around us. We would call this learning how to exploratory orient. I'll put a video below on that. So that's one step that we might take that isn't about diving into that content, but is diving into the present moment. The next thing is, of course, education. And I'm all about education and in-depth education, so that when a person does gain more capacity to be in the present moment, and they do gain more ability to be with their sensations, emotions, etc., when they have that capacity, if and when that memory comes up and through, and they start to feel a heart that starts to beat, or they start to feel a perspiration, or maybe a coolness, or maybe they feel their body going into this spontaneous movement, which is indicative of that old traumatic memory starting to heal and process and come out. If we haven't done the education to understand not just those three things that I just mentioned, but the other myriad of things that could occur, when that thing might occur, after we've gained that capacity to be connected to our body in the here and now, if we aren't aware of these various potentials, we'll call it that, we might dismiss what's happening. We might go into more of a fear response with what is happening. And we might not gain that opportunity to use that physiological response, what we're feeling, as medicine. I often say to my students that I'm teaching you how to become your own medicine. And part of that, again, to review, is to stay connected to the here and now, become really good at staying connected to the here and now. The education pieces, so that we are aware of all the potentials that might come up, knowing that we can never predict. This is the other thing. We can never fully predict when an old traumatic sensory somatic experience might decide to come up and visit us. Therefore, we can't always script when we're going to have these healing responses. So to go back to that initial question, which is, Irene, I really want to work on this stuff, but I'm just too afraid of what's going to come up. Know that this is a normal fear. If we look at the current model of a lot of, not current because we're changing the model, but old past therapies and ones that are current now would just have you dive right into the deep end. To use another example, I like my analogies. If you have never downhill skied before, and I was to say to you, hey, let's go downhill skiing, like the snow's great, we've got this great pitch, here's your gear, I'll cover the cost. It would be close to, if not impossible, to take that person and be safe. It would not be safe, it would be reckless, it would be terrifying. So if we think about healing at this deep somatic level, old scary experiences from the past and multiple experiences from the past, it's like that. I would never say, hey, let's just go remember all the things that occurred to you and maybe even imagine all the things that you don't remember, and we'll just dive right into that pool. We'll just ski down that hill with no experience, no training, no bunny hill, no getting used to being in those ski boats. I think you get the point. I hope you get the point. So when we have that worry, that fear that we might start to feel things that we can't handle, know at least if you work through the worlds that I work in and through the world of somatic experiencing and really sequencing our healing, our trauma healing, we don't throw you off the hill at the top with no experience. We give you all of the foundational learning, and we do baby steps and increments so that you can get comfortable with this new world of working with the body, working with the stress responses, knowing what certain things mean, and also knowing how to resource yourself with things on the external so that if things get too intense, you can pull yourself out, right? Again, the idea of a ski hill, usually on a hill, if you've never skied before, will be a first time learning, but usually on a steep hill, there are these, they're called cat tracks. There are the green runs. There are ways to get down the hill that are less intense. Of course, you need to have the map to find them, or if worse comes to worse, you just ride back down the chairlift or the gondola and you say, I'm not going down, right? Not today. Today doesn't feel good. I'm not going to go down. I'm going to use that resource, the gondola or the chairlift, etc., etc. All right. So to rewind, the basic premise of this video is, if you are wanting to do this work, if you want to get into working with your somatic system, healing at this nervous system level, and there's that little inkling that's like, I don't want to because I'm afraid that I'm going to remember these things. I'm not going to be able to handle it. I'm going to re-traumatize myself. I'm going to go into more shutdown. That's valid. And it's valid based on a lot of the models that we've seen that, again, many of my clients and students have done, where it's been so scary and way too much and way too fast. It's like they were dropped off at the top of that ski hill and said, we're going to do this and I'm going to be here with you, but let's just do it anyway. That's not useful. Even if you've never skied and there's an expert there with you, trust me when I say that isn't going to help. You're going to want to run far away from the top of that ski hill, even with all the best gear and the best instructor with you. Look at this as an educational process. Look at this as a way to relearn how to be embodied, how to be in the current moment. Because basically trauma, it takes us out of the current moment. It takes us out of being with our physiology, being with our sensations, good and scary ones, emotions, the whole spectrum. It doesn't allow us to live in the moment. And so part of this, to go back to one of the very first things I said in this video, is we want to learn how to stay connected to the here and now. We want to get the education on board to understand the myriad of things that may bubble up and pop up as we start to do this work. And then of course, knowing that part of this work is really looking at what I call, again, neuroplastic healing sequencing. So if you want to learn a little bit more about that, be sure to check out some of the other videos I've put below. If you want to dive deeper with me and my world and how I've created programs that have really given people this education on a deep level, again, everything is below if you want to look into this way of working. I hope you do. Again, I've worked with people all around the globe who have had histories that are just so intense and so scary, and they've been in that situation where they've been dropped on the top of that ski hill and they've tried to go down and it hasn't worked, and so they're going back to the basics. They're teaching themselves how to be present, how to be their own medicine, and when we do it this way, good things really start to happen. So thank you for being here. Thank you for watching this video, and we will see you next time.